Welcome to A Canadian Investing in the U.S., a podcast and YouTube channel focused on Canadians buying real estate with host Glenn Sutherland.
Welcome to another episode of A Canadian Investing in the U.S. This week, my guest is Mike Wolf. Mike, I just actually recently reached out to you, but you've been on my list. Whenever I first started the podcast, 3.25 years ago, I was like, let's make a list of everybody I know that's Canadian that invests in the U.S. And you're on the list, and I don't know why it took us so long to get here, but thanks for coming on the show.
Well, thanks for having me, and better late than never. I've been actually investing in the U.S. for about 17 years, so I was doing it back before it was cool for Canadians to invest in the U.S. So.
Oh, yeah. So, Mike, for people who don't know who you are, give us a little intro.
Well, let's see. I've been investing in real estate for 31 years. Roughly the first half of that was in Canada. And then a buddy of mine moved from Calgary, where I'm from, to Las Vegas. And I used to go to visit him kind of on a monthly basis. And every time I'd go there, the prices were going up and up and up. And at that time, things in Calgary were pretty stagnant. The market wasn't really doing very much. And I thought, man, this is almost too good to be true. And I had no idea how you deal with the taxes and how you move money back and forth and how you convert currency in those days. And I definitely made a lot of mistakes. But I could tell that that opportunity was much better than what was going on in Canada at the time. And after that, I never really looked back. So I've been investing only in the US for probably the last 17 years or so. Once I bought that first property in Vegas, I stopped investing in Canada because I could see there were a lot of advantages from many perspectives. And here I am after all these years, still investing very heavily in the U.S. and expecting some really good opportunities coming down the pipeline with all this crazy COVID chaos.
Oh, yeah. And I just did a little bit of homework on you over the last week, and I always thought you were a Vegas investor, and then I realized you're in Georgia. Or did you change?
Well, I see, one of the things that I recommend all investors do is, the opportunity is gonna move, and it's not always gonna stay in the same spot. And so I started, my first US market was Las Vegas, and I got in there a little bit before the recession started. And in those days, I was mostly flipping homes to the biggest segment of the market back then was Californians were leaving California. They were heading to Vegas to lower their cost of living. And it was almost too good to be true because those prices were going up on a daily basis. And so I got into that market. Of course, the recession kicked in around 2007, 2008. I was already invested there, but I was mostly flipping homes, and I was out really quickly. I got my paycheck, so it was really easy for me to pivot with the market. And I started to, as the market really took a hit, and that market got hit the worst of any US city, by the way. It dropped 80%. So imagine a $200,000 home all of a sudden be worth 40 or 50 grand. That's what was happening. And
for doing flips, your exposure time is while you're doing the renovations. So what kind of, how long were your renovations? Are they 6 months, 1 year? How long do you?
We nowhere near that because the market was moving so fast. A lot of times we had them sold before we did the renos,
nice.
we were on. I wasn't looking at doing any the stuff we do. I like to do stuff that's relatively easy, and I don't like gut jobs. And we're not buying in crappy areas. We're buying nice homes in good areas, and I've never really dealt in the hood, for example. There's some really sketchy parts of Vegas, let me tell you, but I wasn't investing in those. So we were getting in. We were making them look prettier, modernizing them, and typical flip for us back in those days was maybe 60 days, 30, 60, maybe 90 days at the furthest. We didn't want, if it required more than that, I'd rather have my money tied into something that, lower hanging fruit, put it that way. But then to answer your question, so we did extremely well in Vegas. I started to, as the market started to drop, I could see that a lot of, back then, and it's starting to happen again, that American dream of everybody owning their own home, that switched dramatically to people in the US. It became a nation of renters. And so I could see that renting was going to be where the big money was. And nobody was looking, if you're flipping, if you're buying and fixing stuff, there was nobody buying. And of course, the market was dropping. So you don't want to be flipping in a dropping market. Right. So we started to buy and hold, and the properties were getting cheaper and cheaper all the time. And But then that market came back as could be expected. And when that happened, I then took my money, I sold my properties in Vegas, took that money and started buying stuff in Phoenix. And I rinsed and repeated what I was doing in Vegas. We did the same thing over. We just switched markets. And so one of the things I recommend to investors is, one, don't be married to what's in your own backyard. Pick a market where you're going to get the best returns. And then as soon as that opportunity switches, be prepared that you're going to have to go to a different, you don't have to, but you're going to make a lot more money if you go to a different market that's lagging behind. And a lot of times we'll see markets, they'll follow suit with the last one. So to me, it was kind of, when I got to Phoenix, it was like I read the book. I already knew what the ending was. Yeah, the market's going to come crashing down, and then it's going to bounce back up. And those people holding properties and creating cash flow for themselves while they're waiting for that to happen are going to win. And so, and then I've done stuff in Florida, I've done stuff in Texas. Now we're really heavily invested in Atlanta, which is a great market. But one of the reasons for my success is I don't get married to a market, and I don't invest where I live. I'm actually a nomad, so I don't really live anywhere. But even if I did live somewhere, right now I'm in Tulum, Mexico, by the way. I don't own any real estate in Mexico. Just because I'm hanging out here doesn't mean I have to own the real estate here. So don't buy where you live, buy where it makes sense, and be prepared that what makes sense is not going to stay the same indefinitely.
Cool. So I know that you're a guy that's been doing this for a while, and you've built some systems and you've grown your thing. So what does a day-to-day look like for you? Like what parts are you still involved in? What have you been able to outsource to some other people?
Yeah, so great question. And over the years I would answer that question very differently. 15 years ago, I was a workaholic, and I was pretty much doing everything myself. And I was extremely busy, and I had gotten really good at making the money, but I had zero balance in my life. My health was like it was starting to fall apart. My relationships were falling apart. And so this is kind of a question that's really dear to my heart. Actually, I was in Vegas about a month and a half ago, and I did a TEDx talk, and that was my topic is happiness and fulfillment. So back in those days, I was chasing the money, and I was always brought up that you're the guy, you got to go work hard, you got to go and put food on the table. And so I worked really, really hard, long hours. I was very passionate about what I was doing, so it didn't bother me. But as my relationship started to fail and didn't get to spend as much time with my daughter as I wanted, I started to see that there was other things more important than just money. So anyway, we fast forward to now. I went from, well, let's fast forward to 2019 before COVID hit.
Okay.
I went from, over those years, I went from workaholic to playaholic, mostly by putting teams in place and starting to see, when I went to Vegas, I started to buy and hold properties. That's when I started to build my first team. And I remember I had to hire my first property manager because I own properties in Calgary and I own properties in Vegas. And I couldn't be two places at the same time to collect rent. Right. And so I very reluctantly hired my first property manager. You're probably much the same. I know most entrepreneurs, we have, I'd say, actually not just entrepreneurs, most people in general have control issues, but especially entrepreneurs. And it's very difficult. Yeah, it's very difficult not to let other people step in because we think they're going to rip us off or they don't know how to do it as well as we can. And it really comes down to control issues. But anyway, I reluctantly hired my first property manager in those days. And I believe there's 3 phases to being if you become a successful real estate investor or a successful entrepreneur, you'll get through these 3 phases. And the quicker you get through, the better off you are. So first phase is solopreneur, where you do everything yourself. That was me for most of my early career. Then you hit a brick wall where you can't scale any further. You couldn't possibly add another property unless you want to work 20-hour days instead of 18-hour days, and unless you want to give up sleep and food. So, so then we get to that next phase, and I call it the micromanager phase, where we reluctantly hire somebody, but then we need to know every little thing that's going on, and we kind of babysit them. And I was stuck in that phase for a little while. But I had it so my property manager had to call me if anything went wrong. Somebody didn't pay rent, I needed to know. If an appliance broke, I needed to know. And I remember there was one week he called me on a Monday and said, "Hey, Mike, the stove at 123 Main Street is broken. What should I do?" And he, of course, knew what to do, but I made it so he had to call me. So I said, "Well, let's see what it costs to fix it. And if it's over a certain amount, we'll replace it." And then literally 2 or 3 days later, he calls me up. He goes, "Hey, the dishwasher was a different property, different appliance. but same question, and saying, what should we do? And I gave him the exact same answer. When I hung up the phone, I thought to myself, man, am I ever dumb? Like,
Your bottleneck.
like I'm not doing the work anymore, but I'm spending just as much time on the phone putting out fires as I did ever, when I was doing the work. And so that led me to my third phase, and that was where what I call the freedom phase. And the freedom phase is where you have great people in place, you trust them, they've got your back, you've got theirs because you take good care of them. And stuff happens magically while you're not there, while you're not even paying attention to it. And so that was the start of my first system. I put a system in place saying, hey, if anything's over $2,000, don't even call me, just deal with it. And if it's under that, then yeah, we'll have a conversation. That number eventually increased to 5,000 and 10,000. Now it's like, unless a house is burning down or somebody died, don't call me. So, but the reason I tell you all this is that ironically, I always thought by having more control, I'm gonna make more money. By doing everything myself, I'm gonna save money. And I make way more money now than I ever did being a workaholic. Being a playaholic, I make way more because I've scaled and I have people doing just about everything. So if we, for example, these days we buy, well, I'll tell you about my 3 revenue streams, and then I'll explain from there. So my first revenue stream, I have a bunch of rental properties. I don't deal with any of them. My teams deal with them. I almost never get any calls on anything to do with them. And that all just happens magically while I'm traveling and hanging out with my grandkids or doing whatever it is I feel like doing or volunteering.
Yep.
So that's my one revenue stream. My second revenue stream is we sell turnkey properties in Atlanta, Georgia. And so what that means is I'm going and we're buying homes 20, 30, 40 at a time from the banks. These are typically foreclosed homes. We're inspecting them, fixing them, putting tenants in place. My property management team looks after it, and we sell these to investors literally around the world. And this takes up almost none of my time too, because it's my money working for me. It's my teams. We have a whole bunch of systems in place. And this stuff all happens while I'm doing my stuff once again. Before COVID hit, once or twice a year, I would do live events. And I typically, I'm most known these days as the tax lien and tax deed guy. So I teach tax liens and deeds and overages for that matter in Houston, Texas, because that's my favorite place to do it. And I would do it
Really?
once.
You found that's better than Georgia? I was 100% sure you were going to say Georgia when you said that.
Not for that strategy. And so once again, I mentioned earlier, sometimes you got to go to different markets to do different things. So for buy and holds, I love Atlanta. One, that market is going up tremendously. It's very landlord friendly, so it's easy to get rid of bad tenants. That is a great market for that strategy. But for tax liens and deeds, I find the best market for that is Houston, Texas. And, I would do 3 and 4 day trainings back in 2019, twice a year. I'd go for 4 days, and then I'd hop on a flight and I'd go somewhere warm and tropical because that's my happy place. Or I go visit my grandkids, or I do a lot of give back stuff. So then COVID hit. Sorry
to cut you off, but I'm just thinking, like, doesn't Georgia pay like the highest interest rate for a lien?
So when we talk about Georgia, they have what's called a 1-year redemption period. So
yes.
normally if you buy a deed, there's normally you just own the property. It's your home. You can do whatever you want with it.
Yeah.
Now in a place that's got redeemable deeds, and Texas is one of them too, but Georgia, there's a 1-year redemption period.
Yeah.
And you can't really do much with that property during that year. So you pretty much have to wait to see if and what I mean by redemption. First of all, let's explain what a tax is. I know not everybody. So
I have done some episodes on it, but go for it because there's people who jump in near the end and they haven't listened to the old stuff.
I'll give a really brief rundown. So basically, when somebody doesn't pay their property taxes after a certain number of years, the county needs to put the home up on the auction blocks. They need that money for their hospitals, their police force, schools, etc. And so eventually these homes end up on the auction block. And if you're an investor that knows how to do it and knows the due diligence, and I just want to put that caution out there that if you don't know what you're doing and you go to these auctions, you will get smoked on, you will lose your money. So don't do it till you know what you're doing. But if you know what you're doing, you can get some really good properties for pennies on the dollar. And a tax deed, there's a difference. You're going to see the terms tax lien. A tax lien, you're not actually buying a property. You're typically getting a certificate. Quite often it's called a a TLC, tax lien certificate, and you're basically, you're going to get, when that homeowner eventually pays their property taxes, you're going to get a check in the mail. You might spend $1,000. There's a 10% penalty. When that homeowner pays, you're going to get $1,100. So don't mix up tax liens and tax deeds, two different things. Now, tax deed, you're actually buying a home. In most places where you buy a tax deed, you now own that property free and clear. If there are any mortgages on there, they get wiped out. Any liens, they get wiped out. And I say the word typically. So if you don't know when the atypical thing is going to happen, you will get wiped out. So, but anyway, in Atlanta, in Georgia, not just Atlanta, all of Georgia, they have a 1-year redemption period, meaning that that homeowner can come back and purchase that home back from you within that year. Now, the problem is that makes it really difficult if you're going to go flip homes. If you go flip that property and then the homeowner comes back and says, I want to buy it, and you no longer own it, that could put you in a really bad financial situation. So I don't really like that 1-year redemption. And I also don't like the fact that in Georgia, there's not that much you can do with the property while you're waiting for that year to transpire. Yeah. Now, if we switch that over to Texas, in Texas, there's a 6-month redemption period. And that during that redemption period, the previous owner can come back, but they have to pay you a 25% premium over and above what you paid for it, plus any expenses. So if you go and you have to recarpet it or put a new roof on it, they're going to pay you for that roof and that carpet. They're going to give you a 25% premium over and above what your cost was.
Those repairs have to be like necessary though, right?
Yes, they have to be necessary. You can't just go put $1 million chandelier in there. And if you do that, you will lose your chandelier and you won't get your $1 million and you won't get the 25%.
Yeah.
So don't do that. But yes, it's called necessary expenses. So whenever you do that, you always want to take pictures of the before and the after, and you want to you want to be able to justify if it ever went to court why you had to do it. And so if you put a new roof on and then the previous owner says, well, I'm not paying for that roof, didn't need it. Well, you want to have an inspection report from a roofer saying, yes, it did. So anyway, these are the big distinction though between Texas and Georgia is in Texas, during that 6-month period, you can actually rent the home, you can live in it. There are ways actually that you can flip it, and I actually teach that. But in general, you have a lot more that you can do during that redemption period than you would have in Georgia. So yeah, so that's why I absolutely love Texas, particularly Houston, for that strategy. So I used to do trainings there once or twice a year. I go there for 4 days, then I'd hop on a flight, I'd be done. And then 6 months later, I'd get kind of bored and I'd call up my team and say, hey, maybe we should put another event on the calendar. Let's start the marketing machine up. And so, so that's what life looked like before COVID. Now, during COVID, I still have those first 2 revenue streams. Like I still have my rental properties, and we have great systems in place. So I'm getting almost all my rent. And I know that there's a lot of landlords struggling with that. So I actually have a video on YouTube somewhere that you can Google what to do with tenants during COVID and it's ethical ways and how to treat them well, but still get paid. But in any case, so I still have that revenue stream. We're still selling turnkey properties, and they're selling like crazy because Microsoft just announced that they're building a major hub in Atlanta. Ooh. And they're creating thousands of jobs, and we can't keep up with the demand. And on top of that, of course, we typically buy from banks. And the banks, there's a foreclosure moratorium now till June 2021, where the banks can't foreclose on anybody, which I'm glad. I mean, I hate to see the banks kicking people out in the middle of the street during a pandemic. That would not be very thoughtful of them, and not a very nice thing. But that's not going to last forever. And
no, the tap's been closed, and once it opens, there's going to be a backlog.
Right, exactly. So what that's going to do is one. By the way, we've sold around 1,100 homes in Atlanta over the last 9 years. Just to give you an idea.
Holy moly.
and right now, I could probably sell another 50 if I had the access to the inventory. So right now, because the bank, we can't buy from the banks, we're buying one here, one there. We're buying onesies and twosies where we normally buy 20s and 30s and 40s. So but that machine's still running. And once again, not with me. My teams are doing the acquisition and the fixing up. So I like to have my money work for me, but I don't like to necessarily, I like to really protect my time. And that's what I talked about on the TED stage, protecting your time and creating happiness and fulfillment and figure out why you're on this planet. We're all here for a reason. And I don't think it's to be a workaholic. But anyway, but my third revenue stream, I used to do, as I mentioned, once or twice a year, I do teaching. And then when COVID first hit, I went back to Calgary. That's where my daughter and my two grandsons are.
Yeah.
And decided that, okay, well, I'm gonna hunker down here till, and I thought things were gonna last maybe a few weeks or a month or two. I had no idea. No, I mean, obviously nobody knew it was gonna go this long.
No.
But I spent 7 months up in Calgary, and for the first 2 weeks that I got there, I just slept in every day. I had no flights to catch. I had nothing on my calendar because the stuff that we do for my business was done by other people.
Yeah.
And I was just sleeping in, watching Netflix, taking it easy. And then all of a sudden my phone started to ring, and I got calls from podcasters and radio show hosts and people putting on summits. And all these people were wondering what's going to happen with real estate, what's going to happen with the economy. And one particular person who was putting on a 3-day summit, she teaches wealth creation, but she doesn't teach real estate. And I was supposed to speak on her summit for 45 minutes. And her people had so many questions about real estate. I think I ended up speaking for like 2 hours. And then she asked, hey, Mike, would you mind doing like a full day online training for my people? I go, well, I got nothing else to do, so why not? Let's do it. And then next thing you know, she said, well, why don't you do like a 3-day for my people? I go, okay. I never thought I could sit in front of a computer for 3 days, by the way.
Yeah.
But I actually loved it. And to make a long story short, 2020 actually led to me creating my first ever year-long group coaching program. And I would have never done it if it weren't for COVID, because I normally, I love teaching, but I also like to protect my time. And, but anyway, so 2020 and 2021 have looked a little bit different than previous years. And then I'm actually working, I came out of semi-retirement and I'm actually working harder, which is really ironic. And, but I'm loving it. I'm having a lot of fun, but I'm also figuring, okay, when more borders open, I can go back to being my nomad self again. Then I'm going to get my top students to be coaches, and they're going to be more. They'll probably do 80% of the training, and I'll be in the background doing 20%. Whereas this year it's the other way around. So yeah, so COVID switched things around a little bit, but it's led to a really fun and exciting business, and it kind of took my mind off of things, because being locked down in Calgary when you're used to traveling the world is not an easy thing, especially when that snow started to come down, because I normally avoid that.
Yeah.
So there's no such thing as a typical day, but normally, like I said, I've gone from workaholic to playaholic over the years, and I've kind of added a little bit more work into the mix, but I'm also cognizant that once the borders start to open up, I might not want to be doing a coaching call at 3 a.m. when I'm on a cruise ship or in Europe or Asia, or who knows.
Yeah, who knows?
So it's very hard to answer what a typical day looks like, but that's what my life looks like right now.
Awesome. And like, so in the real estate part of the whole big Mike Wolf thing, your team can buy properties, renovate the properties, and you don't even have to be part of it really at all. Like, do they send you a list, an email that has like, hey, by the way, we bought some properties?
No, I have it so systemized now that I don't even need that, because I have, so to give you an idea, I've got somebody on my team, his main, and he's actually my partner. I actually have a partner who's boots on the ground in Atlanta. Yep. And he actually has relationships with several banks. And so his main job is to schmooze bankers, take them out for lunch and drinks and whatever. Yeah. And so that they want to sell their properties to us instead of somebody else. So he deals with all that. After he buys, let's say he bought a package of 30 properties today. He then, we get the inspectors to go in, and they go and they give us our reports of what needs to be done in all the homes. They pass that on to our tradespeople who go and fix up whatever needs to be done on it. And then once it's fixed up, our property manager goes in, starts getting all the photographs taken and videos, etc. And then I've got salespeople literally around the planet that promote these properties. A lot of them are realtors, a lot of them are financial planners. These people are people that have other jobs in the same kind of related industry. But whenever they get somebody who's interested in real estate, they send them my way. And so this all happens while I'm doing whatever I want to do. And I have actually a website with a list of my inventory. And that a lot of times, I do have some people that maybe they see me on stage or they hear me on a podcast, and then they call me and they go through me to purchase, which is awesome. I'm happy to do it. But quite often they'll go to I'll send them to my website, and they'll say, oh, what do you know about this property at 123 Main Street? I go, I know absolutely nothing about that property, but my team knows that property intimately. So I go back to my team, find out, hey, can you tell me a little bit about the tenant and the neighborhood? But this all happens while I'm doing my thing.
That's great.
I don't have to pay attention to it. And when we go fix up the homes, for example, Glenn, if you were to come with me to Atlanta and say, Mike, I want to see behind the scenes in your turnkey operation.
Yeah.
After you saw about 2 or 3 properties, say, Mike, I don't need to see more. Because guess what? They all have the same carpet, same color paint, same appliances. So it's very, very standard. So I don't get calls all day long.
Yeah.
Or people say, hey, what color carpet should we put in this home? So it's very standardized and systemized, and we figured out what works. And we're kind of the McDonald's, but when I say McDonald's, I don't really respect that company necessarily, but I do.
They have the best system. They have the best system.
Because I'm vegan, but anyway, they do have the best. They do have the best systems of probably any business in the world, and we've tried to emulate that.
Awesome. No, if you're ever going to Georgia, let me know, because I'm now investing Ohio, Alabama, and Florida, which basically Georgia's right in the middle.
Yeah,
So I drive right down the 75 right through there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, I probably will be going. I don't go there that often. When I do, it's not for work.
No.
I sometimes go and hang out with my partner and the team, but we're not actually working.
I go down there to shake hands and meet people and keep relationships up.
Absolutely. But yeah, if you're ever going that way, let me know. And I know right now leaving Canada is a big pain if you want to come back.
Well, wait
so
a bit.
When I left, I knew I wasn't coming back for a while, which I'm happy with. But anyway, I love my country, by the way. I just don't like winter. But
I don't blame you.
One of these days we will connect, and we'll definitely make a point to connect in Atlanta or Florida as always.
Wherever, yeah, somewhere warm.
Absolutely, exactly.
Mike, last question before we go. All these people you have on your team, do you keep them W-2 or T4, or are they like all contractors like you?
All different depending on what capacity they work with us. And so, for example, the people that promote our properties, they're not even under contract. That's just they get a referral fee whenever they send people to us. We have contractors that work with us. We have 13 different teams that fix up properties, and so most of those have their own businesses that they're just contractors. So it really just depends on what capacity somebody is working with us. But I have marketing people, for example, and they're actually employees. So there's a whole bunch of different. We have a lot of moving parts and a lot of different people. If you look behind the scenes, and they all get paid differently depending on what their role is within the business.
That led to one more question.
I love
so,
talking about it.
Yeah. Did you find it like, or how do I work this properly? Do you have a social security number? Did you go the working visa way, or do you not?
I did not. I am actually a Canadian, and when I'm in the States, I'm there as a tourist, and
okay.
I have no advantage over most of the people listening, or actually all the people. Some of the people listening probably have an advantage over me. How about you, Ben? Did you go and get your visas and stuff? Or
I am in the final stages of getting an E2 visa, which gives me a social security number. But the more I learn, and as I keep growing, and I start partnering with Americans, and I'm just like, there's less advantage you can do so much with just your ITIN. And I was just like, and your EINs from all the corps, right? But I'm like,
absolutely.
There's so like, there's a few advantages, but there's like, as I partner with more and more people, it's just, you're like, the advantage is like, well, I just covered that advantage with that person,
The big reason why you might want to do that is if you wanted to either live in the US or be able to cross the border more easily and whatnot. But in general, I haven't found it necessary. And as a nomad, I love the US and I spend a certain amount of time there, but I'm also traveling to other countries, so I don't have a need to stay there more than 6 months, for example. And because my business runs without me even being there, it's not like I'm flying down all the time and looking at homes, or I'm not on the front lines anymore. So if this had happened in my workaholic days, yes, I probably would have got a visa because I'd want to be in control of everything and looking for the properties and doing all that stuff that I used to do. But these days, I really don't find it, at least for me, I don't find it necessary at all.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Mike, 60 seconds. Just tell us what courses you have, what you have to offer. Let's just spill it out. So if anyone's interested, they can come track you down.
Absolutely. Well, one, I've got a free ebook, and if you go to my website, you can have that. It's MikeWolfMastery.com. Wolf, just like the animal.
Yep.
So if you go there, you'll get my free ebook, and it talks about the top strategies you can be doing right now, even if you're locked down or stay-at-home order or whatever's going on in wherever you're living. these are strategies you can do from your computer. Also, it talks about a lot of no money down strategies. When I first started 31 years ago, I was a ex-university student trying to pay off student loans so I could go get my next degree. And so I had to be very resourceful because I didn't have the cash, I didn't have the credit rating yet. So a lot of the strategies are about things that require very little cash, such as wholesaling and subject to an agreement for sale. We talk about the
financing,
taxings and deeds, how to raise money, etc. So that's all in this ebook. So download it, it's free. And then I'm doing these online trainings. They're 3 days, and I teach in a lot of detail as much as I can give my students in 3 full days. And we do a lot of Q&A and talk a lot about different strategies, both that work both in Canada and the US, and especially well for Canadians wanting to invest in the US. And if you go to mikeswealthmastery.com, I'll give you the details for the next. I've got one March 12th to 14th, but I don't know if this podcast will be.
Yeah, this is probably gonna. I'm about 2 months out for pre-recorded, so it'll probably come out in like April or probably late April, early May.
Well, by the time you release, it'll probably be getting close to another event that I'm going to do. Assuming that, if the pandemic disappears and I can travel full time again, then maybe not. But otherwise, or you can always send an email to me.
Yeah, or even if you send me an email, I will update the show notes with the most up-to-date link.
Awesome. That would be great. And then, so you can always reach out because I will go back to teaching my taxings and deeds live and in person once it's safe to do so. But of course, nobody knows when that is. But I did hear that Texas is opening up. And they're going.
Did they close?
I don't know if they did, but one thing that they did. One thing that has been shut down is the auction, which is very unfortunate.
Yeah.
And but I think everything's opening, and you don't even have to. I think they even said you don't have to wear masks anymore in Texas. So they're going. They're just like they're just saying we're done with COVID apparently. So so I may have my training again, but I'm only going to do it, of course, when it's safe to get people together in rooms. I'm not going to be the guinea pig testing this stuff out to see what. So anyway, when it's safe, I will be doing trainings again, but I'm not going to do it till it's safe to do so.
Awesome. Mike, send me an email afterwards with like links to all the different programs. I'll throw them all in the show notes so people can jump there quick if they're looking for them.
Oh, that's awesome. I appreciate you, Glenn. That's really kind of you.
Yeah, no problem. I usually ask at the end, how do they get in contact with you? I'm going to guess it's going to go to Mike Wolf Mastery or whatever.
Yeah, you can reach out to me, info@mikewolfmastery.com, and I reply to every email that I get personally. If it's a real estate question, I will reply to it myself. And I love to hear from other investors because that, after all these years, is still my passion, and I love helping other investors if they get stuck with something, or if you're Canadian trying to cross the border. There's a few things you definitely need to know, and I definitely paid too much to. My banks convert my currency. I paid too much to 2 different government tax bodies until I figured some things out. And so I'm always happy to share what I've learned over the years. And I know Glenn's doing the same. That's why he's got us, right? So,
why reinvent the wheel?
Exactly. But I appreciate what you're doing as well, Glenn.
Oh, thanks. Just sharing, teaching people.
I think the most successful real estate investors, people say, well, why would somebody share? And I think the most successful real estate investors, they don't have that scarcity mindset. They all have an abundance mindset. And that's why we're successful. If you have the wrong mindset, you're not going to make it in this industry. And I think by sharing, it all comes back. You share with one person, you give them some advice, they learn something new, they come back to you and they teach you something. And we just keep pulling each other up and helping each other. And that's what I love about this industry, at least the great people in this industry. Not all of them are great, but the great ones, it's a lot of fun to network with them and learn from each other. Love it.
All right. Thanks for coming on the show, Mike. I really appreciate your time. I know you're a really busy guy, but you just told me you're not.
That's not that busy anymore. But I'm glad you reached out. It was great timing, and I really appreciate you having me here.
Oh, thanks so much.
My pleasure.